Hi friends, my name is Marissa, and today we're going to be talking about something that, if you've ever been to Buenos Aires, you know is everywhere. That is gelato. Currently, I'm studying abroad in Buenos Aires, Argentina, and one thing that immediately caught my attention that is completely different from back home is the amount of gelato in the city. It's everywhere, on every corner, multiple stores on every block, big chains like Fredo and Luciano's, small family-run artisanal shops, they are literally everywhere. But I think there's a deeper story behind this. In this video, we're going to talk about how gelato made its way to Buenos Aires through immigration, why it's such a staple in the city now, how it's evolved over time, and most importantly, the big picture, how gelato has evolved from handmade artisanal shops to the larger commercial chains like Fredo that we see today everywhere. And we'll also take a look at how fast food culture that spread from America and the growing need for convenience in this city and across the world has impacted this trend. Let's dive in and see how gelato has transformed from a sweet treat to a reflection of a broader cultural and economic sense of change in Argentina. Now, if I were to ask you who has the best ice cream in the entirety of the United States, I bet you could think of an answer pretty quickly. Dairy Queen. Dairy Queen. But if I were to ask you if that ice cream or that Dairy Queen Blizzard had any cultural significance to you, I'm pretty sure your answer would be no, followed by a, why are you asking me if I'm related to a Dairy Queen Blizzard, Marissa? Turns out, people in Buenos Aires, Argentina, they have a really different response to this question. In fact, they might even feel that their ice cream, or as they say here, gelato, is actually pretty significantly tied to their culture. This food has a really long history in Argentina, and the people of Buenos Aires are really proud of their gelato. Some quick history about gelato for you. Gelato is just the Italian word for ice cream. If we want to get technical, it comes from the Latin word gelatus. Gelatus? Gelatus? Gelatus. We're gonna have to check that pronunciation, which literally means frozen. It's not exactly accurate to say that gelato is ice cream, although it is very similar. Gelato has a different process, contains less fat, it's typically churned slower, and it has a denser, smoother texture. Approximately 60 to 65% of Argentinians right now claim Italian ancestry. Between the late 19th and early 20th century, there was a huge immigration of Italian immigrants. And when they moved to Argentina, they brought along with them their food, language, culture, traditions, and we see a lot of this within gelato. Today, in Argentina, this immense popularity of gelato reflects the heavily Italian population and their heritage that they brought with them when they immigrated. Helado was something that brought them together. Making gelato was something that grew them. They passed it down from generation to generation. Now we have heladerías, ice cream shops, gelato shops, everywhere. So yeah, no wonder people in Argentina are so proud of their gelato. So given all of this important contextual history, we put gelato in its place. We know where it's from, we know who made it, we know who typically enjoys it. Just know that gelato became popular for many reasons. First of all, it was cheap and transportable. It was everywhere, on every corner. Lots of people would go with their families, get gelato, hang out, and spend time together. Secondly, it was a way for the Italian immigrants, as we discussed earlier, to stay connected to their cultural roots. And third, Buenos Aires has very warm and humid weather for the majority of the year. This made gelato a sweet and refreshing cold treat to enjoy during this warm and humid weather. Over time, gelato in Buenos Aires and Argentina in general took on its own shape. The flavors became unique, and many of these flavors are a direct reflection of Argentina's own unique ingredients. So fruit that can be found here, fruit that's popular here, for example the dulce de leche, although not a fruit, is one aspect of Argentina's unique cuisine. I think it's really important that we take a step back and realize how truly gelato was not just a dessert, but rather a way, as well as a dessert, way for the Italian immigrants to stay connected to their roots and feel a sense of home in the brand new country that they had just landed in. They wanted to keep their culture alive in a new country, and as more local Argentinians got the hang of it, it grew like wildfire. All of this being said, we can really see how the love and adoration for their culture is ingrained in these small artisanal gelato shops. When we compare and contrast the small artisanal shops to the larger chains like Fredo, I think that there is a huge difference, and if you've ever stepped foot in either or, you kind of immediately know. From my observations throughout this project, when I walked into the Fredo, it was noticeably different than the local artisanal shops. Typically, Fredos all look the same. They have the same decorations, the same clean, pristine look. The menu is either a TV or a very neat screen. Whereas the local artisanal shops are typically very different from this. The floors can be checkered, they can be wood, the decorations are different, the paint on the walls is colorful. There are menus that are handwritten, all of these things are very different. Now, a lot of this can be because corporations set standards for each of their individual franchise, so they have the same standards, they have the same decorations, all these things are the same, that's what they want. Whereas the local artisanal shops can do what they want and make it as fun as they want. Taking a step even further back, we know that the early period of artisanal gelato in Buenos Aires started with little gelato carts. Immigrants who ran these carts would walk around the neighborhood selling their gelato, and this laid the foundation for what would really eventually become a multi-million-dollar industry in Buenos Aires. These small carts set a high standard for the quality, with recipes passed down through generation after generation. But as we'll come to see, things started to change in the city, and the world became a much more modern and fast-paced environment, taking gelato with it. You might be wondering, so how did we get from these local artisanal gelato shops to the huge chains that have hundreds and hundreds of locations throughout the world in Buenos Aires alone? The answer lies within the modernization of Buenos Aires. As the city grew, so did its gelato industry. By the 1980s, we began to see a large rise in commercial chains like Fredo. Although first opened in 1969, Fredo claims their Italian roots are what make them an authentic gelateria. With 160 branches in Argentina alone and many more in the United States and neighboring countries, it's no secret that this is a chain. They offer an impressive 25 flavors. When I went, I got the dulce de leche granizado and the raspberry lemon sorbet. I noticed that inside there were not a lot of people, the seating was kind of bare, but it could have just been the time of day. Or it could have also been that the audience that these chain parlors are more likely to attract are the people who want convenience, the people who want to grab an ice cream and go, people who would pay a little bit more but have the ability to take it and leave. I guess I kind of have this presumption that it began similarly to the transition from home-cooked meals to fast food in America. Since it was around this time, the same time that Fredo opened its doors in 1969, in 1967, McDonald's opened its first restaurants outside of the US, in San Jose, Costa Rica. This implies that McDonald's and other fast food chains were working their way down. It's no secret that the US had profound impacts on cultures outside of its own territories. In this case, mealtimes were the target. For example, we saw in America, the industry kind of suggested that the more time that you don't have to spend cooking, the more time you could be working and earning money for your family. Something else that happened in the 1960s, 1964 to be exact, was the invention of the to-go cup. The to-go cup made its first experience in Long Island, New York in a 7-Eleven. It was the first chain to start offering these transportable cups for coffee and wake up the whole stay alert, stay alive, make it coffee when you drive movement. Talking about urbanization, I found this quote that represents the way that these small artisanal shops have turned to these big chains and why, part of why, this was able to happen. Urbanization brought mega cities and secondary cities. Urban incomes rose, women increasingly worked outside the home, and men and women often commuted to work. As a result, the food service sector rapidly expanded. Economies of scale became possible, and chains emerged and served the poor and emerging middle-class markets. Capitalism and the culture surrounding fast food has made us shift the way we view our meal times. Just like these fast food chains prioritize the efficiency, the lower costs of production, the mass production, these larger chains of gelato like Luciano's and Fredo followed suit. Their focus has shifted from what was originally uniting people over a commonly loved food to the profit margins, the speed, the ability to scale their businesses larger and larger and expand. And sometimes we see that this is at the expense of the quality and the authenticity of the gelato. Also, we can make a parallel to these larger gelato chains, the larger coffee chains similar to Starbucks and Dunkin' Donuts. People are more likely to go through Starbucks because they know what they're going to get. It's familiar. Whether you go to a Starbucks in America or a Starbucks in Argentina, most likely the products are going to be a similar cost, similar quality, whereas if you were to go to a local gelato shop or a local coffee shop, you might not know what to expect and you're not sure of the quality that you're paying for. While not a comment on gelato directly, this author is referring to Argentina's susceptibility to absorb these fast food chains that have spread from North America and infiltrated both the homes and the pockets of local Argentines. Perhaps surprisingly, as local researchers had predicted this could not happen, hamburger chains have made headway in Argentina, which has a tradition of beef quality and preparation. Argentina also has a long-standing tradition of European-style coffee shops and bakeries, but McDonald's grew tenfold there in the 1990s. I took to my nearby neighborhood park and asked the locals where their favorite gelato shop was in Buenos Aires. Approximately 6 out of the 8 people I was able to speak to told me that the place that they would recommend to go get gelato was, in fact, a chain restaurant. Solely from this ratio of recommendations, 6 being for the chains and 2 being for local shops, definitely infer that there's some sort of favoritism. That being said, some people swear by the traditional handmade gelato, whereas others prefer the convenience and reliability of the big chains like Fredo. Interestingly though, a lot of people are pushing back against the commercial dominance of big chains. For many, it's about more than just the taste of the gelato, and it's about supporting the local businesses behind this culinary tradition that has deep roots in such a beautiful and passionate city. Such pushback is supported by AFADAHYA, AFADHYA, Asociación Fabricantes Artesanales de Helados y Afines. They ensure that the voices of small artisanal producers are heard in national and industry level discussions. This year, they're celebrating their 50th anniversary. 50 years is a long time, but it's not as long as gelato has been a part of Argentina. And from all of this evidence, we can conclude gelato is a hugely important cultural aspect of the food and cuisine life in Buenos Aires and Argentina as a whole. To conclude, we can see that this shift from artisanal, locally made, and historically significant heladerias to the larger chain style in Buenos Aires has had many different causes over the years. Looking back, we can point out that the shift in factors such as costs and increased want for convenience are what made large-scale production cheaper and more efficient than the business styles of artisanal shops. The increased demand for a more rapid lifestyle as capitalistic ideas from North America spread around the world, along with other fast food chains, forever disrupted previous eating habits inside and outside homes globally. Thanks for watching, and I hope this video gave you a little taste of gelato's journey in Buenos Aires. See you next time!